How many times do I got to prove? If it ain't the 40 Audi, then I got to ooh shit. Where should I start? So much spots to choose. I was raised by the gun. If you don't chop, you lose. Fucking gunshot. Man, I got blocks and twos. I'm back. We on the mat. You better.
Yes, I know. Aura farming? Really? I promise. This is a serious narrative analysis about how tension is built through the reputation of characters, factions, and titles, i.e. the Admirals and the Warlords, previously established by Oda in the series. I couldn't resist. I think it's funny. If you don't know me, I love One Piece. Like, I really, really love One Piece. I am fully caught up and invested in community discourse. I consume the early spoilers ravenously, and have my own rotation of chapter reviewers that I watch on a week-to-week basis. Shout out to my boys Brago, Sive, and Morge. I don't know these dudes, but still. So consider the title thumbnail my tribute, my homage to Agenda Piece. But don't worry, there won't be any mindless power scaling here. Only mindful power scaling. Anyways, this week we'll be examining the Sabaody Archipelago arc. And this arc is just insane. You get a real look at the imperialist, fascist world government as you were introduced to the Celestial Dragons for the first time. The self-proclaimed gods who are descendants of the 20 families that created the world government. You get a look at how they view people, how they shoot on sight for someone simply walking towards their direction. You see that they ride on the backs of slaves and shackle them with exploding collars that trigger at any semblance of an escape attempt. Through this background alone, you peer into the disgusting state of affairs in the One Piece world. The slave auction is genuinely one of the most harrowing scenes in all of shonen. The absolute power of the Celestial Dragons is put on full display. And if you so much as put a hand on a Celestial Dragon, a light tap, if they take enough offense, they will summon a fucking Admiral. One Celestial Dragon. I think the way that Oda introduced both Aokiji and Kizaru is probably the reason why, in the modern One Piece era, fans still fervently defend the Admirals. These boys were tough, both elemental Logias, untouchable to most pirates. For all of pre-timeskip, they were heralded as the strongest force that the world government had. Every scene with an Admiral was instantly tense. I'd say they were propped up in an era where a lot of One Piece fans would argue had a lot more tension. And though I think the current arc, Elbaf, has provided for some of the most tension the series has had in a decade, if we went bar for bar, arc for arc, pre and post timeskip, I think Oda has written with tension better in the early half of the series. And I think this is due to the fact that the crew was significantly weaker. They didn't have things like armament hockey and future sight, conqueror's hockey, all of that. And the crew being weaker inevitably makes it easier to showcase the abject terror of these stronger threats. Because when they appear, the Straw Hats don't have any hope of defeating them alone. When the only direct counter to a Logia user is armament hockey, and with the facts that the Straw Hats don't learn hockey till Sabaody, it's no wonder that when people like Kizaru first appear, it's like, whoa, an undefeatable force has just spawned on the screen. And at this point in the manga, we already have a frame of reference for how strong the Admirals are. Right after Long Ring Long Land, out of nowhere, and I mean out of nowhere, Aokiji arrives. Out of sheer luck and sheer mercy, Luffy and the crew survive the interaction. If it wasn't for Kuzan's investment in Robin's future, and if it wasn't for the predicament Luffy put Aokiji in, aka him looking senseless if he messed with the crew after accepting a solo duel, the entire crew would probably be sinking in the depths of Impel Down. A display of sheer frozen power, the ability to freeze entire bodies of water and incapacitate anyone without as much as a movement. This is the power of a Logia, in the hands of the Navy's strongest force. Again, it was mercy and Aokiji's sense of self-respect that led to their escape from the situation. A real ethical hooper, if you will. So naturally, if Kizaru was the same ranking as Aokiji and the Straw Hats were to run into him, I'm not so sure that he would be as merciful. And God forbid, a Kainu pulls up. With this frame of reference established, the setup of consequences of harming a Celestial Dragon hang over the entirety of the arc. And because of Luffy's nature, and his indifference towards consequences, the plan for one of the most satisfying punches in the series is put into motion. Kami the mermaid is kidnapped and put up for auction. Naturally, Luffy and the Straw Hats come to her rescue, though this time, they're dealing with a different beast, a new level of evil and a grander level of danger. Which is crazy, because they've interfered with civil wars and even raided a government-controlled stronghold. But never have they directly come into contact with the world nobles, as well as the reality of the slave trade in person, in real time. The reality that the world is ruled by slave-owning nobles with absolute power, prone to put on antics such as gamifying slave trade and commodifying it as a pageant for means of entertainment. The twisted, strange, perverted horror of the state of affairs. Don't get it twisted. In the anime, the cheery game show music is not indicative of Wheel of Fortune vibes. It just further shows how fucked up this all is. The fact that these fuckers would turn something as horrid as a human auction into jeopardy is obscene. Why is this whimsical? And all the Straw Hats can do is glare in horror as these abhorrent elites bid millions to make another human being property. And as you see a pirate literally bite his tongue off before he is up for auction, you see Sanji remark a reality: suicide may have been the valid choice in this situation. As Kami's turn to be sold arrives, before Nami can even put in a bid, St. Charlos sets the bid at 500 million berries, a brazen opening gambit that no feeble commoner could possibly counter. The Straw Hats are aghast, the crowd aghast, hell, Disco is aghast. This is the power of the world nobles. Unadulterated subjugation at the site of their political, economic, and militaristic power. Charlos, shamelessly, pathetically, aura farming with cold hard cash. That's a crazy sentence. Himself a figure with no real physical power, but backed by a militia that only the combined force of the Yonko could maybe take head on. This arc, after all, is set up to be the preeminent conflict in the manga, the masterpiece known as Marineford. And then Kid reacts to this whole situation, explaining it is a miniature version of the world. What a farce. And what a quote. It represents the power dynamics between the commoners and the world nobles. That even those who are non-20 family affiliated nobles are simply ants to the celestial dragons, grasping at straws to imitate the power of their real overlords. And just as Disco is about to smack the gavel and yell "sold," Luffy crashes through the roof and runs straight to Kami. As Hachi tries to stop him, you see his tentacle arms release, to the racist horror of the elite in the building, who throw slur after slur. And in the midst of this commotion, you hear a bang. Cruel and unusual Charlos, cheery that he's murdered a fisherman, but at the same time proclaims that he's caught himself a free fisherman slave. That's a little contradictory, but then, and what I would argue is a top 5 iconic moment in One Piece, simply for what it represents as a revolt against unjust rule, Luffy walks up and slugs the fuck out of that bitch-ass celestial dragon. Just the sheer amount of hype, satisfaction, relief that you get from these impact frames, man. The fearlessness, the will, the conviction. It is an all-time character moment for Luffy. But unfortunately for him, he has just triggered the spawn conditions for the boogeyman. Though I have to say, I just love the Straw Hats' reactions to all of this. Luffy is just straight up like, sorry y'all, an Admiral is coming. And Zoro's like, shit, you did it before I could. And I love how all of them are like, well, this happened, so we might as well get back to business. Let's find the keys, beat up these guards, save Kami, and dip out. God, aren't they so cool? Moments like these are exactly why we love the Straw Hats so much. They stand on business. And now, I have to talk about Rayleigh. He's really important here. Rayleigh, apparently, sold himself to slave traders so he could pay off some gambling debts and steal from slave owners. Isn't that insane? Talk about aura, brother. Damn, what a psycho. And not to mention we cut to Garp, the strongest Marine of all time, basically telling the Marines to leave him alone. Do you want the Marines to face 2 legends at the same time? Bro, Garp is talking about Whitebeard here. Freaking Whitebeard. And he's here talking about 2 legends at the same time. Do you know how high of a pedestal that puts Rayleigh at? Obviously, at this point of the story, this is kind of hindsight, but even with that lens, that's crazy. And now, the shadow of the Marines' future war with Whitebeard underlies the tension already established in the arc. And here, you get the first use of Conqueror's Haki in the entire series. Again, a feat displayed by Rayleigh. And it's pretty incredible. Knocking out those 2 weak with literally aura. Haki, the new power system that is about to be introduced, in its infancy, was an aura-based power. Still kinda is. The brother is literally farming using aura. Oda gives the introduction of the most powerful ability in the series to Rayleigh. Wow, man, what an entrance. He's literally one of the coolest characters in the entire series. They escape and they save Kami, and they run back to Shaki's bar. Then bro just casually drops that he was the first mate of the Roger Pirates. Everyone in that room already knows his name. He knows what happens during the Void Century, and he gives an accurate recount of what actually happened to the Roger Pirates after they disbanded. Romance and adventure in the air. Roger's will for the Great Pirate Era confirmed. He literally little bros Shanks and reveals him as an apprentice to the Roger Pirates. Luffy's idol, the man that gave him the straw hat. And I think here you get a great picture of the values of the Roger Pirates and how they align with Luffy's. And you also see the parallels between Luffy and Roger. Luffy says, the king of the pirates is the one that is the most free. He knows it when he sees it. Rayleigh knows that Luffy is that guy. Freedom is one of the central themes in One Piece. And here in front of him is a living embodiment of everything that Goldie Roger stood for. The strongest are not the oppressors. The strongest are those who are free of those shackles, free from the ideology that total, callous, optimal, efficient control is the only way to run a society, rule over a people, free from fear of subjugation and the courage to live that way that you truly want to live, in spite of those who may tell you otherwise. Luffy, though not physically there yet, has all the makings and charisma of the next Pirate King. And this is why Rayleigh is so important. Well, obviously besides all the lore implications and the first real look at the Roger Pirates, that even though an Admiral is on the way, his presence can act as a sliver of hope in any dire situation. That his strength and his wisdom can promise to help the Straw Hats in their time of need, at the very least, to the comfort of the viewer. And though we have an Admiral with strength unbound on the way, we have another legendary figure here, stopping the tone from getting too dark, too hopeless. There is a chance, at least from the Straw Hats' perspective. But, like, it's still kind of hopeless, honestly, because Rayleigh says it'll take 3 days for him to finish coding their ship, so the Straw Hats have to quote-unquote lay low until then. Have you seen these guys that just pulled up? Y'all really think that's happening? 3 days might as well be an eternity. You see this definitive hope that the Straw Hats have, that it's as easy as just laying low, with Brook even laughing, saying, "Oh, I'm scared," like, yeah, Brook, you probably should be. Luffy even seriously considers going to Sabaody Park, which I know is a joke, but you can kind of just tell that he thinks that it'll all be good. But unfortunately for them, Kizaru is just pulled up. In another iconic introduction, the Marine battleships shoot their cannons, and Kizaru glides into the scene, riding on top of a cannonball, landing to the tune of an explosion. What an entrance, man. Kizaru's just so cool. He's got this Italian mafia godfather vibe to him, and you know he huffs that grass, so he's just too cool with it. Jokes aside, I think he's one of the best written characters in the series. The cold, callous ruthlessness that he portrays throughout this arc is a great setup to his character. His outward, aloof demeanor contrasted by his mechanized obedience and the speed and efficiency in which he completes his tasks for the world government build up his menacing aura. He is the ultimate cog in their machine of oppression. All of that make his future appearances all the more poignant and impactful. And him being a light Logia is super sick. He moves at the speed of light, kicks out laser beams, and he can make a fucking lightsaber. And the first thing he does is solo the worst generation. The group of pirates build up to be this super powerful group of up-and-coming pirates, destined to be the new rulers of the seas. And he just demolishes them, decimates them with complete ease, tosses them around like they're some sandbags. They're fodder. I swear, Hawkins' life would have ended if Kizaru didn't get a call from Sentomaru. How in the holy fuck do you expect the Straw Hats to run away from this man for
3 days to make that potato salad? 3 days!
There is no feasible way that the Straw Hats can hold out here. The moment that one of them gets found, there is no escape. You can't run faster than the speed of light. There is no one currently on this crew that could match the power and the speed of Kizaru. So already, Oda has set up an insurmountable task for the Straw Hats, especially because they are public enemy number one. In all honesty, the Straw Hats completely underestimated how grave the situation was. Through their success in Paradise, they've kind of become arrogant. They burned the world government flag and defeated a couple of warlords. Impressive feats for rookie pirates, but pale in comparison to the great powers that reside and have dominated the New World for decades. They overestimated their abilities, thinking that they could simply shake off a Marine Admiral, not realizing that their escape from their last encounter with Aokiji was a stroke of luck. This is the wake-up call the Straw Hats needed, the failure to let them know that they are not ready for the rough seas ahead. Even with the help of the legendary Silver's Rayleigh, not only could they not put up a fight, they couldn't even escape. It takes the combined force of the monster trio using finishing moves and even the other Straw Hats using signature attacks to keep them down. And mind you, Zoro still has PTSD physically and emotionally from his first encounter with Kuma, even though, nothing happened. Sanji even flat out says they don't have nearly enough energy to take on a second pacifista. Even the Straw Hats are starting to understand the severity of the situation. And then the boogeyman, the Admiral, hasn't even shown up. But Sentomaru does. Someone you traditionally wouldn't look at as a top tier fighter in the series, but the fact that Luffy can't even touch him is Oda establishing how in over their heads they are, and also how important Haki will be going forward. And I think low-key, there's a valid discussion here about the integration of Haki and power scaling, considering that this feat by Sentomaru means that at this point, Sentomaru could probably beat the likes of Crocodile, Rob Lucci, and Moria. The Lucci one being especially ridiculous. But I won't get into this contentious Haki conversation here. It's all the community really talks about and warrants a video on its own. We all know Oda struggles a little bit integrating Haki into the story in a way that's consistent. It's still a really cool power system despite it all. The Sentomaru feat is used to serve the narrative, showing the Straw Hat's shortcomings and how far they actually are from contention for One Piece and Luffy becoming Pirate King. At the end of the day, Luffy's still a rookie. You don't see rookies winning rings in year 1. I mean, unless you're Magic Johnson. But anyways, Kizaru finally appears. On site, he's ready to execute Zoro. And this, I won't lie, is probably the closest we've gotten to a member of the Straw Hats legitimately almost dying. They can do absolutely nothing. When I was first watching this, I thought, there's no way Zoro's about to die. And even though I had already seen that there was a whole post-time skip section, I saw all the post-time skip costumes, the tension built up by Oda here was so palpable that I genuinely feared for Zoro's life. Especially in the anime with how this is dragged out, no one can hit Kizaru, simply because no one has Haki. No one can touch a Logia. It's highlighted by the Straw Hats' reactions. Nami, shell-shocked with horrified eyes, exclaims, "No, he's gonna die." Robin tries to move him with Venti Floors, but Kizaru simply teleports back to Zoro and plants him into the ground. Then Rayleigh appears, saving Zoro's life. And this is the highest level clash that we've gotten in One Piece at this point. An Admiral, dubbed the Navy's strongest force, the equivalent of a human WMD, and Rayleigh, the literal right hand of the Pirate King. Again, think back on the scene with Garp where he says, "Do we want to take two legends at the same time?" And here, Oda gives you a little bit of release from the tense script that he held the audience in. We know that a powerful figure that has been established, the first user of Conqueror's Haki in the series, is here to protect the Straw Hats. And one of the most badass lines that still sticks with me to this day. Don't go picking these buds before they sprout. Their era is only just beginning, and I want to see what they do with it. This is such a cool acknowledgement from Rayleigh, the right hand of the Pirate King, exclaiming that this crew got next. And see, this becomes complicated for Kizaru, because this was just supposed to be a quick extermination mission. But now, he's run into a legend. He acknowledges that to capture him, they would probably need to prepare themselves in more ways than one, implying, even with Rayleigh being old and Kizaru being in his prime, would probably need assistance here. And then you get a 6-sword lightsaber battle between the two, but you know, I just think that's cool. And Luffy, letting go of his ego, proclaims, "Right now, we can't defeat them," which feels almost iconic to me for some reason, because even though we've been shown that the Straw Hats can't compete at this point, this is the first admittance of it. The image that we have of the Straw Hats is being able to conquer any enemy, with Luffy being able to overcome every obstacle and win every battle. And this image is just kind of shattered here. Everything is piling up, and not even Rayleigh alone is enough to save the Straw Hats. Their last get-out-of-jail card, unable to even help them escape. With everything bad cascading into one another, it really seems like this might be the end of the road for the Straw Hats. After all of their triumphs, there is no ace in the hole, no possible way that they can come out of the situation unscathed. This is already an event that will halt the Straw Hats' voyage for the foreseeable future, whether they like it or not. Even if they were able to escape, Lord knows that they are not ready for the new world. You think this hockeyless, bouncy balloon is laying hands on Kaido? He can't even do Gear 3 punches without going cheap. Oda masterfully established the gap between the Straw Hats and the real contenders for the One Piece, and creates a mountain that they will have to scale. The Grand Line was already such a feat. And even defeating a few warlords and CP9 was a big feat, but that was simply paradise. If they are to descend into the hell of the new world, they must become stronger. This spiral, this pathetic state of near wipeout that we see the Straw Hats in, it's sad. It's like seeing your favorite player get swept in the first round with relative ease. And just as all hope is lost, the real Kuma pulls up, saves Zoro, though to the Straw Hats, it looks like he's wiping away their existence completely. From their perspective, it looks like each and every one of them are getting killed off one by one. And this is the most heartbreaking rescue. A tyrant, in the eyes of the Straw Hats, is eradicating Luffy's crew right in front of him. Okay, I'm gonna talk about Egghead stuff real quick, if you don't mind, so skip to here. Man, I just have to say, this is brutal to watch from the lens of Egghead, or It's brutal to rewatch after you've experienced Egghead Island. Seeing earlier scenes of Bonnie knowing that they were both on Sabaody, the fact that he gave his body up to military science, knowing that it was to save the life of his daughter, that he could never meet her again, even though, all the two wanted was to be together. And the fact that there's a face-off with Sentomaru, Kizaru, and Kuma, like, they were best friends at one point. And you see Kuma respond to Kizaru with a cold remark, with Kizaru also forced to give a stern demand. When their real spirit, their real will, their real desires beg them to dance together and enjoy pizza to the tune of the drums of liberation. It's a sad state of affairs, and when Kuma tells Luffy, we probably will never meet again, he means it. He knows that his demise is near. Okay, real quick. Welcome back, non-manga readers. Luffy bangs his head on the ground, lamenting that he couldn't save his friends. He gets sent off, and with the last paw, the Straw Hats are officially eradicated. Their first total defeat. Their first real, genuine failure that will set them and their adventure back a whole 2 years. This is the first scar, the first scratch against Luffy's ego, against his own self-image. And though he shows promising flashes in the arcs ahead, the reality is that he simply is not at a level where he can compete on his own merits, his own strength. Sabaody is one of the most tense arcs in the series, and you can feel it through the entirety of its events. From the introduction of the Celestial Dragons and their inhumane fury, to the first time you see the slave collars explode, to the slave auction, to Luffy punching the Celestial Dragon, bringing upon an Admiral, to the backdrop of the inevitable Paramount War, to meeting Rayleigh, establishing the highest level of piracy, to their inevitable run-in with Kizaru that amounts to Kuma wiping them out, even though he saved them in the process. Oda uses previously established characters such as Aokiji to really give life to the threat of the Admirals. The brutish, snide way that Spandam moves and the cold, callous, murderous nature of Lucci, forewarning the cruelty and barbarism of the world nobles, despite the heavenly pedestal that they perch high upon. This arc is a culmination of the evil figures and organizations that Oda has built up and uses to build up literally to lash out at the Straw Hats, giving them a dose of reality. They are weak, but despite it all, you know damn well they're gonna get back up. Despite what they lack in physical weakness, there is a real tenacity that they have shown throughout the whole arc. A humanity and a courage to save their friends despite whatever unconquerable champion appears before them. You have to almost respect this brashness, arrogance mixed in with their kindness. There is a reason that Kuma and Rayleigh both put their security on the line to save them. The intangibles of this crew is enough to push the world to a new dawn. Right place, wrong time. The world needs them, but not now, not in their current state. But Lord knows that after a wake-up call like this, the Straw Hats will, no, they do step up to the plate. Just another insurmountable obstacle that they will scale in their pursuit of the One Piece. A testament to their unwavering belief and dedication in Luffy. Their certainty that this is the man that will become the king of the pirates. Alright guys, if y'all made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video essay. Lots more to come. I got a couple topics in the works, thinking of maybe doing a free run video. I have a Zelda music video, maybe I'll do a Sound Euphonium one. We'll see. Got a couple things that I want to write about. I've been watching Kill la Kill, so maybe I'll do something on that series. But yeah, just hope you guys enjoyed the video. If y'all made it this far, I'm guessing y'all did. So all right, take it easy, y'all.